What's up, Fog Farmers? I'm Quacker's Co, and this is the fish fry for November 23rd, being held at Gone Fission Hydro Plant. Our cookware for this rotation is the Splash-O-Matic, the squeezer, the Splat roller, and the tri-stringer. Just about any range in the composition will do on Gone Fission, and this composition should work out pretty well. Not just do we have some weapons with some really good coverage, but we also have some weapons with some really good damage output. Just keep in mind with the roller in this composition, everyone else should do a little extra work on painting the walls, that way the roller can focus on the turf. And since we have that extra range with the squeezer's pop shot, it should make taking out some of these bosses on the shoreline just that much easier. And when we're on a high tide, it's helpful to remember that squeezer's pop shot fires as fast as you can pull the trigger, so you can actually have a faster fire rate with this weapon if you choose to just pull that trigger really quickly. And that Splat roller can roll over small fry and chum, so it'll be super helpful on clearing the way. On a low tide, we really need to utilize that range of the pop shot and the tri-stringer's full charge shot. Make sure we push those priority targets before they become a nuisance. Half-charged vertical jump shots with the tri-stringer can easily take out multiple pots of a stinger. And just like always with Gone Fission, steel ills become a higher priority target. Their ability to block our damage can cause way too many problems. On a Goldie or a Griller's Wave, this composition should also work out pretty well. The damage output with the roller and the Splash-O-Matic should be able to hold that line on a Glowflies, while the squeezer and the tri-stringer try to cause some damage to those Goldies. The range of the squeezer and the tri-stringer should make a Griller's pretty easy too. Just make sure that the Splash-O-Matic and the carbon roller are on small fry control. On a Mothership Wave, the squeezer becomes the most useful weapon. Keep it moving around and popping the Chinooks before they can land. The damage output of this kit also makes a Mudmouth pretty trivial. Just make sure once that golden Mudmouth comes out, you fully charge up that tri-stringer and start taking out those Quahawks. On the Goalie Seek, if you're confident with your Splat rolling ability, you can get some extra eggs by rolling into him. On a Giant Tornado and a Quahawk charge, just remember that we have a lot of mobility with this composition. Make sure you don't linger in one spot, and try to lure bosses and salmonids into more favorable locations. This composition seems really good, and it should be a good one to help get our ranks up just a little bit higher. Alright, let's get into the cookware. Our first cooking utensil is the Splash-O-Matic. The Splash-O-Matic has fantastic turf and wall coverage. The only things that this weapon lacks is just a little bit of range and damage output, so try to lean on this weapon's strengths. It may not have that range, but it can cause some very quick damage, and it has the coverage and mobility to get you out of some of those situations. And remember, if you're dealing with a fish stick, you're going to be right at ground level if you're dealing with it. It'll probably be easier just to climb it and take it out from above. Our second cooking utensil is the squeezer. The squeezer has a funky technique curve, but like I said before, that pop shot fires as quick as you can pull the trigger, giving it a damage output that's only based on how quick you can pull the trigger. And the range of this pop shot can help us out in taking out stingers and fish sticks before any of our coworkers overextend themselves. You may want to get this weapon down to just using that pop shot. With how much quicker it can deal that damage, it may give you just a little bit more of an edge than you think you have. Our third cooking utensil is the Splat roller. The Splat roller can take out chum and small fry with that roll, but make sure that you flick Quahawks at least 2 times before you start to roll over them. If your squeezer player is focusing on taking out bosses, then it might be best useful to focus on using this weapon like a slosher, using that wide arcing attack and the falling ink damage to take out wider hordes of enemies. It's not as good as the Dynamo with clearing the way to get to a boss, but it does a pretty good job at taking out stuff in your way, that way you can climb up on the walls, and then using the range of the flick to take out a boss. Just like most rollers, if you want to take out a fish stick, try to flick so that most of your ink hits the top, roll up to it, and then paint the fish stick with the roll on the way to it, climb up, and then use your flicks. Rollers are really fun to play aggressive, but in this composition, try to keep yourself a little bit more defensive, and plan out what you're trying to do. That way you at least have an exit strategy in case you try to push a stinger. Our last cooking utensil is the tri-stringer. The tri-stringer, like the Reflux, has one of the highest DPSs in the game. But this weapon has a little bit more of a technique curve to it. Since it has that extended range at a full charge, this is definitely going to be one really helpful boss splatting tool. That full charge can also take out a Quahog if you connect all of the bolts, so keep this weapon on the move and see what your teammates are getting into. You can easily stop a Quahog from knocking them into the water while they're taking out something on the shoreline. The Tri-Stringer also has some pretty good turf and wall coverage, so it definitely doesn't hurt to try to do a little extra painting at the start of the wave. Once it's at a half charge, it does fire the explosive bolts, and it also keeps its wider range of attack. So when you're dealing with wider hordes, try to keep using that half charge. It does take out chum, and if any of those shots missed, that exploding bolt will cause some damage. On an extra wave, this composition should work pretty well. The Squeezer and the Tri-Stringer can use their range in order to cause some damage to the Kohozuna and splat some bosses, while the Splash-O-Matic and the Splat focus on lesser control and causing constant damage to the Kohozuna. Just like always, look for that moment right at the beginning of the extra wave where you can activate your special to not just cause some damage to the Kohozuna, but to also take out some bosses, spawning some golden eggs early on in the wave. And the fish fry usually comes out before the stage rotation, so if you want to catch these updates when they're hot and fresh, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell. And if you want other GrizzCo employees to receive these tips, make sure you like and share the video. Bye-bye. To give the fish fry an algorithm boost, just post in the comments what your favorite or least favorite weapon is of this composition. My favorite is going to have to be the Squeezer. Its ability to use that pop shot to take out fish sticks is just such a nice ability of this weapon. Alright, bye-bye.